Okay, did anyone watch the Oscars highlights? I'd never watched Oscars, but I kept getting the same video on my Facebook over and over again, and it's crazy, okay? It's Will Smith slapping Chris Rock in front of the world, you know? Everyone saw that, okay? So just a summary for those who don't know. There's a comedian named Chris Rock. That's him over there. No, that's not the guy from Rush Hour. I thought it was, but I'm wrong, okay? But a part of his job as the MC for the Oscars is to like lightly tease people, to roast people, all of that. And then so one of the people he roasted was Jada Smith, Will Smith's wife. And she's bald, so he made this like irrelevant reference to this movie from 20 years ago, G.I. Jane, because the main character is bald. But the problem was she has this autoimmune disorder called alopecia, where she's losing hair because of it. And so Will Smith got defensive. He walked right up the stage in front of the world, you know, in front of everybody, and slapped him right in the face. And so social media, going crazy about this, okay? They're going crazy. They're like, who's right here, right? Is Will Smith a good guy? Is he like fighting for his marriage and for his wife? He's like a hero? Or is Chris Rock like the good guy, you know? Because he's just like doing his job and he got in trouble. They're going crazy about that, but all I'm thinking about is like, oh snap, like what would I do if I was in that situation, right? So let's say we're in front of the world at the Oscars and Christine gets made fun of. I'd probably do nothing about it, right? Just too beta, I'm too shy. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to like deal with the repercussions. And so, yeah, I wouldn't slap anybody. But let's say it's instead, I'm Chris Rock, okay? I just got slapped in front of all my big-time celebrity friends and in front of global television, and I just got emasculated, okay, by Will Smith. What do I do? What he did was he just made a joke about it, and he went on with his job, and he did a great job, okay? I probably would have just like froze for like at least 30 seconds, and like try to figure out what to do, and just like tell someone to come up, and I'd go backstage and cry. Like honestly, like that's what I would do. And what about you? What would you do? So what I want to talk about is like, what do we do in overwhelming moments, when we're overwhelmed with emotions, when we're overwhelmed in the space that we're in? And I think oftentimes when we're overwhelmed, it's not this like sudden thing that happens at the Oscars in front of everyone, you have to like think fast. It's usually something that builds up over time, right? So it's either procrastinating projects or neglecting hard emotions and hard feelings for a long time, and it gradually builds up until you can't take it anymore. And this sounds like it doesn't happen, but it actually has been happening really frequently all around us, right? I've been in contact with a lot of people who are just falling apart left, right, and center because, yeah, they haven't handled things well emotionally and mentally, and they need people to talk. They need people to talk to, and oftentimes we're stuck in these for a long time, right? It's not like I can't get rid of these problems with a slap. And the worst part about it is, no one knows about it until you have the courage to open up and share, or until it becomes like a tragedy, right? And so with that in mind, today, we'll be looking at how the Bible models the way in which we should approach our troubles. And so our question today is, how can we find hope in the middle of overwhelming trouble? And then we'll be spending the sermon just slowly going through Psalm 3, where we see that the answer to this question is that we find hope in the middle of overwhelming trouble when we go to God and when we trust what God says. So we'll start with the first point. So our psalm today, it starts with a description of what's happening right at the beginning as David is writing this psalm. And it's this right here. It says, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. That's what the psalm starts with. And I love this because a lot of the Psalms, they're really hard to place into like a moment in time. It's hard to like look at the Bible and be like, oh, this is what's happening. But in this case, we know exactly what is happening. And it's a story that's happening in 2 Samuel chapter 13 all the way to chapter 18. And we're not going to read it all, don't worry. I'm just going to summarize it. It's a story of David failing, okay? Failing over and over and over again. So first, he's failing as a father, he's failing as a king, he's failing as God's servant. And so here's a list, okay? It starts with him stealing someone's wife and then killing the husband. That's pretty bad, right? And then it goes on to him failing as a father when he doesn't protect his daughter, Tamar, from the lustful eyes of his first son, Ammon. And then he fails to punish Ammon after he rapes Tamar. And then so he's just failing in all senses of his life, okay? And so Absalom, which is David's third son, he decides to take things into his own hands. He's like, okay, my dad's not doing anything. I'm going to do all these things that he should be doing. So he kills Ammon in revenge for his sister, and then he decides to rise up against his father to take over as king. And this is when David, he flees from Jerusalem and hides from his own beloved son. And in the midst of all this pain, he cries out to God with a prayer. And we're going to be learning from this. This is how sinful and broken people approach God and how we talk to God. Okay, so the first part of our passage is this. Lord, how my enemies have increased. Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. David is saying, God, everything is falling apart here, okay? Everyone is against me. They're taunting me. They're saying that you're not going to be there for me. You're not going to pull through. Maybe you're not even real. And I think this is the beauty of the Psalms, okay? If you're reading through the Psalms, you're going to see a lot of transparency. It's just raw, real, emotional feelings. I always love talking to some of my guy friends who are married because we have a lot of similar marriage dynamics, okay? And one thing that was kind of funny was our wives, they're so articulate and they're controlled with their emotions, right? They'll be talking to us and it's just yeah, I feel frustrated and disappointed and infuriated and let down and all of these different synonyms for us guys. It's just I feel bad, you know? And I feel like a caveman for saying that because as I talk to my friends, it's just if we're how do you feel? It's it's either two choices. It's I feel good, I feel not good, right? And it just stops right there. And I don't know why, but I think it's in our day and age where we are very reluctant to be real with ourselves, right? Real with our problems, real with our situation, real with our emotions. And so even when we're going through loss, even when we're going through failed expectations, even when we're going through disappointment, what we do with those hard feelings is we're kind of we invalidate them by we're oh, okay, someone else has it worse than me. You know what? I'm okay with it. Or we just don't accept it, we reject it, even though our minds and our bodies are suffering through it. And so there's this huge disconnect there, right? And so we'll never deal with the problem if we always pretend that the problem isn't there. And we'll never go to God with our problems if we pretend that we don't have any. But I think even when we recognize that we have problems, we're still kind of hesitant to go to God. And I think there are a few reasons for this, but in my life, this is probably the main one. One of the biggest reasons that keeps us from going to God is that we put ourselves in God's shoes, and we're okay, what is it like if someone just kept coming back to me with the same problem, asking for help for the same thing, asking for forgiveness for the same thing? How would I feel? I feel so annoyed and pissed off, and it's this picture here. It's I'm gonna flick them, right? I am not happy with that. Or sometimes you think of God as a father, you know, and we think of our father, and it's yeah, I shouldn't go talk to him, right? He's not going to help me out. And the issue with that is you assume that God thinks like us. God thinks like us who are flawed, we're broken, we're human, we're limited. But God is perfect, right? In his compassionate and in his gracious character, he is delighted when you come to him. And he's delighted when you depend on him. And he actually goes out of his way to make this possible. There's this constant idea being reiterated through Romans, and it's this idea that while we were sinners, while we were enemies, while we were against God, Jesus died for us so that we can be at peace with him. So he's going out of his way so that we can be together and united with him. And so we can confidently go to him, right? You can confidently go to him and not feel shame. And this is the thing. It's not based off of who you are, right? Sure, you're a great person, or maybe you suck, and I don't know, whatever you think about yourself, right? It's not based off of your failures, or it's not based off of your achievements, and you can look at David too, right? On one hand, from the story, he's the biggest letdown, and on the other hand, he's actually one of Israel's favorite kings. But David knows that it's not about him, it's all about who God is and on his character that we can come to him confidently. And so when you're in the middle of a crisis, overwhelming trouble, go to God. Don't deny the problem. Don't do it alone. Don't run away from it. Bring it to God in prayer because he is a God who cares. And we also encounter God in Christian community. So some of our church small groups, we've been opening up in a way that we've never opened up before. And it's been such a beautiful moment of healing and restoration. And so the idea there is like once you bring hidden wounds and secret shame out into the open and into the light, that's when healing begins. So you know that I just stole that idea from some book, if you guys read that book. And so yeah, as we make time, as we take the time to be real with God and with ourselves and with other trustworthy Christians, we start a process of restoration that begins with self-awareness and reliance on God, and it ends with a hope in God, especially as our will aligns more and more with God. And so with that said, we move on to our second point. We find hope in the middle of overwhelming trouble when we trust what God says. Let's read the next part of our passage. It's this. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory and the one who lifts my head. I was crying out to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustains me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. Verse 5 and 6 there, I want to put special focus on that because if we look at the psalm as a whole, that's actually probably the middle of the psalm, which means it's the main point. And David there is saying that he's able to rest while in the middle of trouble. And so just imagine his claim with me for a second, okay? Put yourself in David's shoes and think about what he's proclaiming. 10,000s of people who are all against you, all around, right? You're stuck in the middle of an army of people against you. And so I imagine that scene from Avengers Endgame where Captain America, is like standing by himself, facing like millions of like Thanos army people. And that's the kind of pressure and stress you sometimes feel overwhelmed by. And yet David is saying confidently that he is able to rest in the middle of something like that because God is with him. Now, if you're just logical and you understand life, you'd realize this is kind of a crazy thing to say, right? This is illogical. Is David crazy? Is he delusional? What's happening here? Did he just lose his mind and he's like, okay, I'm going to sleep in the middle of all this trouble? Or is he onto something? And I would argue that he is onto something, right? He has hope. Okay, he has hope. And so I want to look at this idea of hope. I want to really put it into your brains, etch it into your minds. But the illustration that I have in mind is so basic that I'm kind of embarrassed by it. But we're going to do it anyways. I'm hoping that it sticks. And so can I get Jason to come up? Can I get Ella to come up? Okay. Hello, this is Jason. He's powerful and strong and muscular. This is Ella. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do a trust fall experiment together. And I'm going to start with Ella, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close my eyes and fall over. And I am going to just really believe that you're going to keep me up, okay? And as I'm falling, what I'm thinking is, I'm hoping, I have hope that Ella's going to keep me up, and I really, really believe in it, okay? And the hope is like, in 20 seconds, as I'm falling, someone's going to lift me up, and my butt's not going to be in the ground. That's my hope, okay? Okay, so you ready for this? Are you really ready for this? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Jason, we're going to do a trust fall experiment. I'm going to fall over. You're going to please catch me up. I'm vulnerable. My trust has just been broken. But my hope is, as I'm falling over, I'm going to hope, I'm going to wish, and I'm going to believe that there's a moment in the future, 20 seconds from now, that I'm going to fall over, and my butt's not going to be in the ground like it was like in a minute ago, okay? So, okay. Don't troll, okay? Don't troll. Okay. No! Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, that's perfect. Everyone, round of applause. Oh. Okay, so the point of that whole thing, and Ella letting me down, all that, I just want to make the case that with hope, there are different varying levels and qualities of it. Okay, there are different certainties with hope. And so in this case, I had hope, same hope. I was hoping that I wouldn't fall over. And I had hope with Ella, but my hope wasn't that great, okay? I was kind of like betting on the lottery, Like, I hope I'm going to win, but I probably won't. And then I had hope in Jason, right? And I'm like, I was pretty sure he's going to keep me up, right? I'm like, okay, I can actually, like, jump off, like, 2 stories, and, like, I'm pretty sure he can carry me, right? And so the whole point of that is to say the quality of hope and the certainty is hope is dependent on the thing and the person that you're putting that trust in. And so let's follow that logic with God, okay? When we talk about hope in regards to God, because we know who He is, that hope comes with actually 100% certainty. So when He makes a promise, it's not like this might happen. We know that this will happen in the future. And that is how David was able to rest peacefully while he was still in the middle of his overwhelming trouble, right? He was so sure about God's promise that he was living as if it has already happened. And that's the thing, we can rest securely on the things that God has promised, right? The promise that God had with David, it actually didn't guarantee that he would live through his troubles. I know that sounds weird, but it did guarantee something better. It guaranteed that the most important things in David's life, they were secure. They were secure. His relationship with God was secure, and all the things that come with that, like lasting treasures and a secure joy and blessings that flow down his family line, those things were secure, and he had security in that. And to strengthen this, we see David actually talking to himself and convincing himself and teaching himself these things. And so we can see in the next slide that he's like going through the theology of God in his head, okay? He's like, God, you are a shield around me. You're protecting me. I'm secure in you. You are my glory. So in other words, you're my worth. I find value in you. You're my honor. You lift my head, right? So I don't have to bow my head in shame because of what I've done or who I am and all these the failures I have, but I get to lift my head with high esteem because of who you are and who I am to you. He answers me, okay? So God is relational. He's not just some abstract idea out there. He's relational. He's a relational being, and he responds and listens, and he sustains us, right? He keeps us going. He's the source and the giver of all good things. And these character traits of God offer a hope that frees David from overwhelming troubles that surround him in the moment. And so that's the huge theory part of it, okay? That was the theory. But let's spend the rest of our time together just looking at what that practically looks like. Trusting God, finding hope in God, It looks different with different scenarios. And it's helpful for me to categorize these different categories, or these troubles, into two categories, okay? Internal strife and external atrocities. And there's that's the spectrum, and there's everything in between. I want to talk about that just so we can kind of get a gauge of what does this look like. And so for internal strife, here's what it looks like for me. I'm very prone to being socially anxious. And where that comes from, I think, is I find a lot of my worth in what people think about me, right? So then in a group setting, I spend 70% of my time thinking like, does this person think I'm cool? Does the youth group think I'm trendy? They don't. Am I giving a good image? Is that a bad image? This is going through my head at all times. Even now, probably, somewhere in the back of my head, I'm like, am I doing a good job? I'm always trying to be externally validated by people's thoughts. And sometimes, I'm always fighting against these. I'm combating these thoughts with the truth of God, but sometimes when I'm not intentional about it, it leads me down a dark hole where I'm just actually scared to be around people because I'm just overwhelmed by trying to figure out what is someone thinking about me times I don't know, in this case, 70 people, right? And so what does trusting God look like in that situation? Where does the hope come from? I think it comes from what David was doing, right? Teaching himself the truth about who God is, saying, God is my glory. So in other words, right, God is my worth. I find value in who God is. I'm made in God's image, so I'm intrinsically valuable because of God, and He loves me. And I can be so secure in this that I don't have to be worried about what other people think because I know that Jesus already thinks the world of me. And so this is actually a real exercise that I try to do every day, where I'm constantly trying to convince myself of God's truth and to live it out, always running it through my head. And so that's an example of how the character of God combats internal strife. And then there are external atrocities. And so this one's tragic, and we don't really know what to do about it. But some of us are victims of evil that are by no means our fault, right? I have a friend who shared that as a child and as a teenager, she was repeatedly sexually assaulted for years, right? And she, to make things worse, it was done by someone who she should have been relying on, trusting. They should have been protecting her. And now she's going through a bunch of issues as an adult because of it, and it just sucks so bad. And I was listening to it, and I just had no words. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what she would have done. She didn't know what to do. And when I heard it, I was already so overwhelmed by just a fraction of what she was going through for years. I felt heartbroken. I felt the hopelessness that she felt. I felt angry. I felt disbelief that someone could do this, especially to an innocent, vulnerable child. And I was in disbelief that these things actually happen to people who are all around us, and we don't even know about it. And I'm like, that's messed up, right? That is evil. That is the work of wickedness and sin. And now, there are resources that have to be reached out to and relied on in these scenarios, like police, social services, counseling, support groups, so on. These are good, God-given resources to us. But in our inner workings, right, in our faith, in our understanding of God in the world, as we feel stuck in these hopeless situations where evil seems to just be winning and prevailing in our lives, what does trusting God look like? What does hope look like? And I think the last part of our passage, it gives us a hint of what it might look like. And so let's read together. Arise, Lord, save me, my God. For you have struck all my enemies on the cheek, and you have shattered the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. May your blessing be upon your people. And we read that violent part about God, and we're kind of like, what's happening, right? Are we allowed to pray like this? Like, does God do this kind of stuff? Am I allowed to say, God, I really don't like this person right now. Can you, Will Smith, slap him in the face with your giant hand and and break his teeth? Like, are we allowed to pray like that? And I think as much as some of us would like that, I think David is alluding to something even greater. And this is it, I think. When David talks about the cheek in the Hebrew, it also refers to the jawbone, right? And when he talks about the teeth of the wicked, what he's doing, he's painting an image of the wicked, of the evil, as like wolves or as lions, and they're ready to pounce on you at any given moment. And so you're paralyzed by fear because of it. Or, unfortunately, for some of us, they already have their bite deep into us, and we're stuck, and we can't escape, and it hurts, and we're suffering, and we don't know what to do about it. And it's in this scenario that David is proclaiming that God strikes the bite of the evil, and he shatters the teeth of the wicked, and so that we can be free from it. It is in God's character to disable the wicked from doing evil. He is all about breaking the hold of evil, ending sin, restoring things that are broken so that we can confidently hope in a future that is free of all this mess. He's doing that in the present, slowly and surely. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But we know for sure that he's going to fulfill that mission in the future. We can have full confidence because with that hope, we know who he is and we know he's going to make it happen. And that hope can pull us through while we're still in the thick of it. And I think the best thing about it is we're not just waiting passively, helplessly for God to do something. God has already empowered us when he has come down as Jesus. He's showed us a life of what that looks like. He died and he defeated death and sin and all that. And so we get to live in that, and he's come down as the Holy Spirit. So we're actually empowered to do something about it, and we can be a part of the force that God is using to fulfill his mission. Here in the now, fighting against and eliminating evil, sin, and injustice through Jesus' example of love. And so to conclude, how do we find hope in the middle of overwhelming trouble? We find hope when we go to God, knowing that he is delighted when we depend on him, and we do that through Christian community, prayer, reflection. And we find hope when we allow God's character to shape what we believe about ourselves and what we know we can look forward to because of who he is and because of his promises.